This is the on-record portion of the Rockbridge Report. I am Peter Rathmel, and I have two guests with me from the Roots and Shoots program at Waddell Elementary, volunteering co-founder Molly Brown and second grade teacher at Waddell Elementary, Sue Shultis. I'd like to start pretty general. What is the Roots and Shoots program?
Well, the Roots and Shoots program is a school garden program that we have just finished our 20th year, and it's called an intergenerational school garden, and we call the children are called the Shoots, and we community volunteers that help them, we're called the Roots, and that's why we called it the Roots and Shoots School Garden. And we have had a very large garden, and every grade has had its own theme garden. So every year you have a different experience. Like the first grade has the Peter Rabbit Garden, and they have to find out what Mr. McGregor grew, and then they go out and plant the carrots and the lettuce and cabbage and all. Then the kindergarten has the sunflower garden and the farm garden, and their plants have to have names of something that belongs to the farm, like lamb's ears, because these fit with what the SOLs are teaching in their classroom. So we try and embellish it there. And second grade is the biggest garden because that was our first garden. And it's a huge garden with 24 raised beds. And we have flowers and vegetables and lots of different kind of plants. And then the third grade is the alphabet garden, and they plant the 26 different plants representing each letter of the alphabet. Like if you're planting in the aster, it would be for the A in the alphabet. The fourth grade has the colonial herb garden because they study colonial history. And they learn all about the different herbs, their medicinal reasons for using them, and they get to smell them and touch them. And the fifth grade does the pollinator garden. And we also have a little fairy garden and a lovely pond with tadpoles and fish. So they have a lot to do in the garden. And we have classes both in the classroom, and then they come out to the garden. But the children really love to be outdoors in the garden because there are always surprises. You never know if there's a praying mantis under near the garden fence, or there are spiders and butterflies are always popping out. And we often say that it's a way of nature's classroom. A garden is nature's classroom. And a lot of the children, it's hard to believe nowadays, sometimes don't know where their food comes from. We often, when the children are planting carrots, and then when they're old, they get to pull them up, they really are surprised. In the same way, when the second graders dig up their big potatoes that they've just planted a little potato eye in the spring, and in the fall they dig up these big potatoes. They didn't really know where a potato came from. What do you think, Sue?
Well, I think the garden, you can teach anything in the garden. You can teach math, science, we do poetry, they sing, there's art, and we cover so many subjects. Anything you want to teach, you could go out in the garden and find a way to teach it.
Like we usually end each class lesson with a song, and we're going to start some of them next week. And when we study about soil, we sing "Dirt Made My Lunch." Thank you, dirt, thanks a bunch. And then when we do the seeds, it's inch by inch, row by row, I'm going to make my garden grow. And they love to sing those songs.
Can you tell me a little bit how each of you guys got involved in the program?
How the what?
How you guys got involved with the program originally?
Well, I had started this in California before we moved here. And when they heard about it here, they asked me to present our slideshow to the faculty. And that's when the second grade teachers were the first ones that said they'd like to try it. So we first started with just the second grade garden.
And when I first came here, I came as a parent, and this was like 21 years ago, and I drove past Waddell and thought, when I saw the garden, I really want my kids to go to a school that would, have a garden. I thought that was a really interesting thing for them to have, and would really add to their education. And so we made sure to live in town so that we could have our kids go to Waddell. And so I started out, my younger daughter was in kindergarten, so I searched out Molly and said, I want to be a volunteer in the garden. And I started out as a substitute volunteer because there were so many other people who were already volunteering. They didn't need me. And then as time went on, I became more involved. And then I got hired at Waddell Elementary as a teacher, and I was a second grade teacher, so the garden program for 12 weeks in the spring, Molly and the other volunteers would come to my classroom, and my kids would do an in-classroom part of the lesson, and then would go outside and do planting or weeding and watering or sensory hunt, looking for things to smell and touch, and visit the garden every week for 12 weeks in the spring. And then as things have gone on, I'm only working part-time now, and so I'm volunteering again. Not as a parent, my kids have grown and moved on, but now I do more volunteering with it.
We emphasize that the children will get to know their garden friend, and they'll garden together. And so we have each class has about 4 different groups, and then we have a volunteer for each group. So when they do their activity, they're always with the same volunteer, and they do become friends.
So Waddell Elementary's been under construction for the past 2 years or so. How has that impacted the Roots and Shoots program?
There is no garden. They had to demolish the whole garden when they tore down the old school. So we've been working hard. We have a steering committee that meets regularly, and we have a new design. They're going to give us a space which is very good, quite near where it was. It used to be the old basketball court, which is nice and level. So they're going to give us that, and we have a new design for that. But it means there are 2 years that we don't have a garden, but we do have our indoor classes. And so we hope maybe a year from now we will have a garden and the children will be in there planting. It's going to take a lot of work.
Do you think the program will expand with the new construction, with the more space with the basketball court?
No, I think we'll keep the same design with all the theme gardens.
So the Roots and Shoots received some national acclaim, and other schools started to use the same program. Well, what went through your mind when you learned that other schools were utilizing your program?
Well, it's always a pleasure. There's a National Youth Garden Symposium every year somewhere in the country, put on by the American Horticulture Society. And we've presented a number of times at those meetings. And we've sold these handbooks all over the country, especially at some of these symposiums. We were early on in the idea of a school garden, but now it's a national movement. I don't know if you know, but the White House has a school garden, and it's become very popular. I think the technology today is making it even more important for children to be out in the natural world. And they love it when they get out there.
What impact do you say the garden has had both on the students and on the volunteers who come in to help teach?
Well, I'll tell you a story. 2 summers ago, I was in the garden before they took it apart, and this tall young man came in with his girlfriend. And he said, I've come with my girlfriend to show her my second grade garden. And he stood by the pond and sang her inch by inch. So it had an impact. And I think because it's very much a sensory experience with all kinds of mysteries that they find out, that it's something they remember because they've had a good time. I think they really have fun in the garden.
And my own daughters who went through the garden program grow, even if they're living in an apartment now, have a pot with some, some kind of plants, herbs, are always trying to grow things even when they don't have the space available. And I think a lot of that comes from having grown up with the garden being part of their life.
And oftentimes the volunteers will say, oh, I was in Kroger's and somebody came up and said hello, because they meet outside the garden too.
And I think it's the intergenerational part of it is really important, because some of these little kids are never around older folks, or the older people are not with their own
Yes.
grandchildren and stuff, so it's really nice for those generations to be able to interact and see little kids get to be with older people, thinking, knowing that, oh, they're wise, they know things, they can teach me things, they're fun to be with, and I think that's an important part of the program.
Well, I think that's about all the time we have here. Thank you for joining us on the on-record portion of the Rockbridge Report.